I am so happy to see you. I've seen many of you in the dry runs, and it's good to see you here today for the Heat 1. To kick us off, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the Dean of the Graduate School and the Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs at the University, Mark Smith.
Well, thank you very much. It certainly is a pleasure to be here to welcome you to the start of the 3MT competition. This is a competition I think that many of you know started as an idea in Australia. It caught on and spread out throughout the world. I think pretty much now every campus that I'm aware of has some version of the 3MT going on. So we are one of many, and in fact there are many of these kinds of competitions going on during this time period. The idea, as you well know, is it's a vehicle to get you to sharpen your skills. If you were doing a thesis, you are one of the world's experts in what it is that you do. But being that you are that expert, sometimes communicating it to those of us who are not experts is a challenge. And so this is a great opportunity for you to refine your skills in communicating. This is really more than just a competition, though. When you thought through the process of how you describe what it is that you do to others, these are messages that you will be giving for many, many years to come to lots of different audiences. And hopefully every time you present that elevator pitch, you'll get better and better and better. The thing that's unique about this is that this one is couched as a competition. So there will be winners associated with it. So that sort of makes it fun. There is some nervous energy that is involved when you make presentations like this. Does anybody here know what I'm talking about? Nervous energy. Yeah. I remember having that conversation with my son. He was nervous before giving a presentation. What I want to remind you of is nervous energy is not a bad thing. It really is a good thing. It can help you to perform better. So think about that. Learn how to challenge your nervous energy. For most of you, if you're feeling nervous, you're probably the only one who will know it. To the rest of us, you'll look like a star. The last thing to mention is we are a community. So I want to encourage all of you to support everyone else. Provide constructive, encouraging comments so that we all can be better in terms of communicating. Because we're really at our best when we act as a family and we help each other. So with that, I would like to wish all of you the very best of success, and I look forward to hearing your presentations. I'm going to be watching all of them, but on video, but I really look forward to that. Good luck.
Thank you, Dean Smith. And we have another thank you to the Graduate Coordinator Network. How many of you know who your graduate coordinator is? Yeah, for those of you who don't, we're going to worry about you. The graduate coordinators have a professional organization called the Graduate Coordinator Network, and they are our 3 judges today for these preliminary heats. A group of them will also be judges for the afternoon heats, and then tomorrow we will have people outside the university for the finals. They also are the organization that's paying all of the prize money for the winners, and they're also paying for the travel to go to the regional competition in Knoxville, Tennessee. So can we thank the Graduate Coordinator Network for their support? Thank you. Dean Smith did a really good job of just talking about the origin of 3MT, so I'm not going to really spend a lot of time on that. Just know that people around the world are doing this, and that we are part of the U.S. contingency and in the southern region of the United States, which is the next level of competition, and I can talk a little bit more about that later. But what I would like to do now is I'm not going to read the rules to you, but I do want to leave them up there just so we're all clear. But there are a couple of things that I want to make sure we're all on the same page before we start, okay? One of them, the most important, is the time, okay? It's 3 minutes. No longer than 3 minutes, and use up as much of your 3 minutes as you can. There's a clock in the back. We've been talking about it. And if you go over 3 minutes, you're going to hear this sound. Yes. If you hear that sound, you're disqualified. Okay? We have not made exceptions in the past, so watch that clock. Even if you're not finished with your sentence, stop. Okay? I would much rather you stop and I don't get to hear your last sentence than to get you disqualified. okay? So keep that in mind. Watch that clock. If we have a technical problem, let's say you're starting, and that's the other thing I want to go through is how this works. When you come to the stage, wherever you want to stand, Renee will start the clock with either a gesture or a spoken word. So if you do this to start, she's going to start the clock. The first word that comes out, she's going to start the clock. If we have a technical problem with the clock and it doesn't start, you're going to hear that. And we won't do it unless it's, 3 seconds in or more. You know, if it starts a second late, I'm not going to worry about it. But if you hear that, unfortunately, I need you to stop. Anytime you hear that noise, just think, I need to stop, okay? It's like the ref blowing the whistle in a game. Just stop, okay? And then we'll have you restart so we can get the appropriate time, okay? The timekeeper will announce the time left at the end of your segment, so the judges will know how much time you left on the clock, okay? Hopefully you didn't bring any props. I've looked at all your slides. None of them seem to be moving. There seems to be no hyperlinks. There seems to be no music. It's all spoken word, so make sure we do all that. And as I said before, the judge's decision is final, okay? Hopefully you've looked at these two and you look at the criteria, but these are what the judges are basically looking at. And essentially, you've already written your script, so I'm not going to go through all of this, but presentation is very, very important. And so let me talk about this one a little more, the engagement communication. We moved the clock to the back because apparently some of you thought that would be a better idea, so it used to be right there. But there aren't a lot of us in here, but those of us who are in here, be sure to communicate with us. We want to know about your research, and at the end of this, we want to be left with, wow, I'd like to hear more from that person, okay? So there's that. There are prizes, and $1,000, $750, and then the people vote for the $500 prize. Okay, thank you, Graduate Coordinator Network. They're writing the checks. Okay, and so these are our judges. Beth's not here, but everybody else is, and so these are the folks that will actually be scoring you for this heat and making the decision on who moves forward. As I announced earlier, there's no set number of you who's going to move forward. My general advice to the judges is let's try to cut it at least in half, if not maybe down to 4 people. Okay, and I think that's all I need to be talking about. So we're going to get started. And so when the first person comes up, we're just going to put the microphone on you. I'll put your name up. And then when you're ready, the slide will go up and the floor is all yours. Okay? Okay, if you'll just turn around.
Many of us in this room know someone who's been affected by diabetes or Alzheimer's or cancer. Diabetes is estimated to affect 1 in 10 Americans. Alzheimer's affects 1 in 10 over the age of 65, and cancers, especially prostate cancer, is expected to affect 1 in 10 American men. So what is it that links all these three? Each and every one of them is associated with a metal imbalance in the body, especially zinc. Now, this zinc is present in very minute quantities, just 2 grams, yet it's responsible for the proper functioning of all of these organs, our brain, our pancreas, even the prostate. It is estimated, so the question arises, why and how? Now, in Alzheimer's, we see an increase in the level of metal in the brain than what is normally there. In pancreas, and especially in diabetes, and in the prostate cancer, we see a lower than normal levels of metal. So to understand this, we have to first identify how these metals are prevalent in biology. And these are mainly present in two forms. One is where they're freely floating around, and second is when they're bound to something like a protein and responsible for their function, for functions as essential as breathing. In my research, we make fluorescent molecules that can look at these two forms, and they light up similar to the fluorescence light bulb lighting up this room. However, one major difference is we use two different colors. Say we use a red one to look at the free metal, and then we use a yellow one to look at the bound metal. And then we see where these are, how they change with respect to each other, and the environment around it. This helps us answer questions as to how and why metals change from a normal to a disease scenario like this. In future, this will allow us to develop therapies based off on metal targeting. This will allow scientists and doctors to combine our research and develop treatments that are based off on this and eventually change the world. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Eri. Today, I brought you one question. What do you think is the number one cause of the death in America? It's not a cancer. It's not a traffic accident. The answer is ischemic disease. So what is ischemic disease? Ischemic disease is defined by a disease caused by inadequate blood supply to the organ or the part of the body. Therefore, if it's happening at your head, it's going to cause a stroke. And if it's happening at your heart, it's going to cause a heart failure. And if it's happening at your limb of your body, it's going to cause peripheral vascular disease. And this peripheral vascular disease is my target disease. When you think of how to treat this disease, you first need to know why people develop this disease. One of the main reasons why people develop this disease is because of their bad eating habit. If you keep eating a fatty food, the fat or the lipid material will deposit on the wall of your blood vessel, and this blood vessel will keep occluding and eventually completely shut down your blood flow. The current golden standard care for this disease is to literally reopening up your blood vessel by inserting a stenting or a balloon. However, this method is very invasive, so that there is up to 40% of the chance that your blood vessel will reocclude again. Therefore, we don't want to use this invasive method. But how can we treat this disease without touching to the blood vessel? The answer is a protein therapy. In this protein therapy, all you need is to just inject a protein, and this protein will enhance our natural power to regenerate your blood vessel and then restore the blood flow. The name of this magical protein is called transmembrane stem cell factor. And this protein is usually known for generating a blood cell. And nobody wanted to use this protein for generating a blood vessel. However, we tried it for the first time, and it was very successful. Here is some result of a mice study. We injected our protein to the ischemic mice leg and then waited for 14 days for the recovery. And red indicate a lower blood flow, and then the blue indicate a higher blood flow. We can clearly see a significantly higher blood flow recovery in the treatment group than the control. We are currently trying this method to the rabbit model and hope to achieve a good result in the human clinical trial. At the end, I would like to finish my presentation by saying that the future is not that far when we can treat this ischemic disease by just injecting the protein.
When was the last time you were at dinner and someone pulled out a phone? Or perhaps you were in a meeting and your own phone rang or buzzed, creating competing demands for your attention. Smartphones have changed our culture. As a result of the many benefits of phones, people take them around almost everywhere they go. And this pervasive use of phones has led to changes in norms for how we communicate in everyday face-to-face interactions. Hardly a day goes by that we don't hear something, and it's usually negative, about how phones are affecting our lives. There are lots of claims and fears out there about phones, but what does data from actual conversations show us? Little research has been conducted in this area, and this is where my dissertation comes in. I look at how we are incorporating phones into everyday conversations, specifically in the context of the family dinner. I ask, is the phone treated as an interruption? And if so, what does this look like? How does the conversation progress when phones are in use? I videotaped 50 family dinner interactions and extracted the clips that include phone use. Then, using a method called conversation analysis, I transcribed the talk and the embodied communication, such as eye contact and gesture. This approach allows me to consider the intricacies of communication. For example, we know that eye contact conveys attention to others, and it's also very important in turn-taking in conversations. But when we're looking at our phones, eye contact is missing. Through this approach of analyzing this various instances of this phenomenon, the switching between interactions we have with our phones and conversations we have with people in our presence, I have documented how moment by moment conversations progress when phones are in use. Now, in 2/3 of my data, I have found that it is adults, not children, who are using their phones. People may have rules for phone use in dinner conversations, but often it's the adults who are breaking the rules. I also have identified that we are developing strategies for incorporating phones into our conversations. For example, sometimes a person will be texting and they read the message aloud, and so other people hear it. Therefore, they are included somehow in that conversation with the phone. Now, I'm not claiming that phones are never isolating or disruptive. However, a closer look at conversations, a deeper look at conversations, reveals that it's not all negative. And from this research, I am showing the important role that adults play in modeling for children. I also am identifying strategies and the amazing ability that we have to adapt to new technologies and create new norms for productive communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. Good. Just turn around for me. Just a second. Let's make sure the judges.
Over 100 years ago, a woman by the name of Augusta Dieter walked into the office of Dr. Alois Alzheimer seeking treatment, noting that she had lost her mind. Upon her passing, an autopsy revealed severe atrophy of the brain and distinct plaques in its tissue. This was the first ever diagnosed case of what is now known as Alzheimer's disease. Unfortunately, those diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease today have no better chance at survival than Augusta did in the year 1901. Alzheimer's disease is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States and is one of the few diseases that still cannot be prevented, slowed, or cured. In fact, each minute in America, one new person is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. This has led to a skyrocket in scientific interest in this disease, but yet there's still no cure. and this is due to the complexity of the disease. Alzheimer's disease, as you can see in the figure behind me, is triggered by a protein called amyloid beta. And amyloid beta starts out as a singular peptide, which is known as a monomer. Yet in the disease state, these monomers begin to assemble into larger structures called oligomers. These oligomers will continue to assemble into larger and larger structures, ultimately forming the plaques found in the brain. Yet this mechanism is much more complex than what I have outlined for you. And this is largely due to the fact that at each of these steps, these proteins can take on a multitude of different structures. The inability to identify and to stabilize these structures is what has largely hindered effective therapeutic design. Thus, my research comes in and we have begun to make strides in this field. And we have done this by using what are known as porous materials. Now, when we talk about porous material, think of a sponge. And in that sponge, in the holes, we're basically using those holes to bind and encapsulate the protein. Yet instead of using a sponge, we're using what's called chemically functionalized porous silica. So what we're doing is we're finding chemical groups and metal ions that have a high affinity for the protein, and we're attaching this to our porous silica to ultimately direct and control this mechanism. Most notably, we have found that we are able to stabilize and isolate the intermediate oligomer stage, preventing it from continuing to aggregate into those higher structures. Additionally, we have found that by modifying chemical groups and pore size, we're able to select and choose the size and structure of the resulting aggregates. This has major implications for therapeutic design and now allows for a target for them to design for. During the time it has taken for me to give you this talk, over 3 people have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in the United States. It is my hope that with this research and similar research like this, we can begin to make this a statistic of the past. Thank you.
Sorry, he said just a second.
Go back.
In 2016, Congress passed the Cancer Moonshot. The idea was ambitious but clear. It was that the country that put a man on a moon could, if we applied our same energy, resources, and charisma, find a cure for cancer. But I think the analogy between cancer and space travel actually goes far deeper than that. You see, when we try to find cures for cancer or new treatments for cancer, we typically invent new molecules. We then test those new molecules in a sequence of tests to see how well they kill tumors. It's a needle in haystack paradigm, and then we act confused when these new molecules we developed are modestly effective at best. You see, it's the equivalent of if we were trying to get to the moon, but we solely focused on building new engines. And we wondered why those new engines weren't taking us to the moon. We only got to the moon by creatively and rationally combining multiple parts. Engines, sure, but also wings, platforms, pumps, and more. In my research, I developed new therapeutic materials for cancer. These materials are nanostructures of multiple therapeutic molecules. For example, I take a recognitive molecule, which is able to recognize the tumor surface, and couple that with an environmentally responsive molecule. That one can retain chemotherapeutics through circulation, but when within the cell, release it, allowing for therapy. In the absence of the targeting molecule, the drug would just get released in all cells, leading to the same side effects we're used to. The targeting molecule by itself would find the cell, but it has no way of killing it. Only together are they both targeted and therapeutic. In the first 3 years of my thesis, I focused on proof of concept of my chemistries and on platform development, optimizing the ratios of recognitive and responsive material. In the final 2 years, I've invented new devices and new methods of testing to better quantify how my material performs in blood circulation, in healthy tissues, in tumors, and once it enters the cancer cell. My final technology has been optimized to deliver multiple therapies directly to colorectal cancer cells. It was a creative combination of many parts, not a single miraculous part that brought man to the moon. In the future, I expect it will be a combination of multiple therapeutic molecules, not a better chemo drug that is a cure for cancer. Thank you.
I'll tell you when to, so I will tell you when to go. Okay, I'm sorry, they're seeing the judges do their thumbs up. That's all the judges, if you're ready.
4 million people die of outdoor air pollution every year. A large number of these deaths happen in cities in the developing world. Delhi, with a population of 28 million people, is the world's most polluted megacity. Here, we look at the composition of these fine particulate matter which cause a lot of these deaths. Particles 100 times smaller than the breadth of a human hair, small enough to enter critical organs and cause serious health effects. Here, we look at the composition of these particles, what these particles are made up of, to understand the sources and processes that govern air pollution in the case of Delhi over here. Here, I present the concentrations of particulate matter for each season in Delhi, and to contrast that with the western city, I have Houston, just to give you some context as to how high these numbers really are. For example, in the case of winter, the concentrations seen in Delhi are 20 times higher than what the World Health Organization considers safe breathing levels. Even for the cleaner months, that is the summer and the monsoon, the concentrations are still 5 times higher than what is considered safe breathing levels. And then just look at Houston to see how high those numbers really are. The reasons why you see these large seasonal differences is because of 2 reasons. One, the change in sources. For the cooler months, you have additional sources from people burning solid fuel to keep themselves warm. Also, change in meteorology across the seasons. For the cooler periods, you have less ventilation. The wind speeds are slower. Also, you have inversion conditions. What that means is that the particles are trapped in a shallow column of the atmosphere, whereas for the cleaner seasons, the summer and the monsoon, you have higher wind speeds, and in the case of the Indian monsoon, you have heavy rains, which leads to cleaning of the atmosphere, so as to speak. The concentration and the composition itself helps us get at the sources. What we found for Delhi was that the sources leading to this air pollution problem were local in nature. That would be things like burning solid fuel for cooking, for heating, vehicular emissions, and industrial sources. One such source gave us the chloride that we see in the pink over here. What was happening was hydrogen chloride gas from industry was reacting with the ammonia gas present in Delhi and forming ammonium chloride, which we see, giving us the chloride concentration that are the highest observed anywhere on the planet. On top of these local sources, you also have regional sources. So cities upwind of Delhi, their sources and emissions coming into the city of Delhi, and then adding to the local sources and forming and creating what you see is the most polluted megacity in the world. So to clean Delhi, we really need to look at both it in terms of the local context and in terms of the regional context. Also, the lessons from Delhi are directly relevant to developing cities around the world with similar sources, and generally to all cities across the world. With that, I would like to thank you for your time.
Good thing. I'm investigating cultural identity and interaction between ancient Greeks and indigenous Sicilians and Italians by studying their money. Money is not only a means of exchange or a store of wealth, but also a strong expression of culture and identity. I trace the native influence on Italian and Sicilian coinage by addressing previously understudied technical aspects of these currencies, like weight standards and whether people preferred bronze or silver currency. These technical aspects, informed by unspoken or even unconscious cultural assumptions and habits, can be better indicators of cultural influence than the self-conscious selection of imagery and motifs. Take, for example, the first US silver dollars, with a bust of liberty and an eagle in a quintessentially American image. Closer analysis, however, reveals their Spanish heritage. These first US silver dollars were on the same weight standard as their popular predecessors, the internationally accepted Spanish pieces of 8, legal tender in the US until the mid-19th century. Another, more contemporary example of the cultural power of weight standards is the persistence of the imperial system in the United States. Though originally imported from Great Britain, this colonial legacy has become a strong aspect of American identity. Conservative American resistance to the metric system was quite strong in the 19th century, as some considered it to be an atheistic and unnatural product of the French Revolution. Even today, the continued use of the archaic and obsolete imperial system is an exceptional marker of American identity. When the Greeks arrived in Sicily and Turanian Italy in the 8th century BC, they found the native peoples using bronze objects by weight as currency. These objects were reckoned against a native weight measure, the ancestor of our pound, called the litra. In their homeland, the Greeks used silver by weight as currency on their own standards in the Near Eastern model. But the Greeks in Sicily and Italy adopted the bronze tradition of their silver poor new home, and with it, the litra. This native bronze pound had a massive impact on the monetization of Italy and Sicily. Starting in around 550 BC, Greek cities minted silver coinage on the litra standard. The natives soon followed suit, in part because of Greek efforts to integrate their own silver system with the local bronze standard. This silver litra standard allowed for conversion between the two systems. Until recently, the traditional colonialist model of Hellenization, in which civilized Greeks introduced silver coinage to primitive foreigners, has obscured indigenous agency. I have found, on the other hand, that the indigenous peoples adapted Greek-style coinage in a way that conformed to their traditional notions of currency exchange, highlighting the persistent influence of local culture on the monetization of Italy and Sicily. My results stand in stark contrast to the traditional view of coinage as an import adopted wholesale by the natives, and suggest the pre-Greek inhabitants of Italy and Sicily had a much greater agency than has been recognized previously. Thank you. Thank you.
All the judges ready?
$14.5 million hours. That's the amount of time people in the United States lost to congestion in 2014. That's equivalent to 42 hours per person every year. How do we solve congestion? Express lanes, which are the focus of my research, are one of the tools on our path to a congestion-free world. These lanes provide reliable travel time in exchange for a toll. However, toll operators and transportation planners face a challenge on how should we operate these lanes so we can actually reduce everyone's delay. The recent headlines show that in Washington, these lanes are moving 15 miles per hour slower than what was promised. And in Virginia, tolls have reached as high as $47. Paying for that is like buying a new pair of shoes every time you go from work to home. A key culprit in this is our lack of understanding of how drivers behave. At every fork in the road shown by the red arrow, a driver has to decide whether to pay the toll or hop onto the fast lane or gamble for a lower toll at a future entry point. So drivers make what I call sequential decisions. These decisions can be influenced by several factors, like how urgently you want to reach your destination, what is your income level, how much information your phone app is telling you, and sometimes just your mood. And the The current pricing models ignore this behavior and use simpler rule of thumbs like increase the toll when there is congestion, decrease it when there is not, which can be far from efficient as these headlines show. This is where my research comes in, where I incorporate the driver behavior into improving the express lane operations. My research has 3 stages. First, borrowing the tools from computer science literature on analyzing sequential decision, I developed driver behavior models that explain how a driver with different characteristics will make a decision under various conditions. Second, I use this model to predict traffic in the future so we can plan for these lanes. My simulations show that ignoring sequential decision, which the current models do, can underestimate future traffic by up to 45%, which can lead to misleading evaluation of future projects and a loss of taxpayers' money. Also, I use this model in the 3rd stage to develop improved dynamic pricing algorithms. These algorithms, when I tested on Dallas Express Lane network, saved each traveler approximately 4 hours extra than what the current pricing models were doing every year. So on a system level, this save time is reducing emissions by 10 to 15%, leading to a greener environment and also making the drivers happy. So even though we cannot turn back the clock, my research can bring you back some of those 42 hours so you can invest it in something that you really care about. Thank you.
Who are the most marginalized persons in education? This is actually a challenging question, but by far, persons with disabilities are the most marginalized. Do you want to know a little secret? It's actually a group of people who are even more marginalized. Persons with disabilities from developing economies, like Trinidad and Tobago. You may know of Trinidad and Tobago as being near to Venezuela, or the famous rapper Nicki Minaj is from Trinidad and Tobago. The population of Trinidad and Tobago is approximately 1.3 million people. But more significantly, 6.3% of that population is school-aged children with disabilities, ages 1 to 17. A couple years ago, I was on my way to collect data for another research project in Trinidad in one of the coastal schools. I drove past a beach and I noticed one little boy just playing by himself, unsupervised, on a Monday no less. It made me realize just how important my research is to improve access to education for people with disabilities and for all students. Interestingly, one of the findings from my research was that 47%, I repeat, 47% of parents felt compelled to keep their children at home due to the lack of services available for them. My research today focuses on teacher perceptions of inclusive education in Trinidad and Tobago. Teachers are an integral part of society and in the classroom, and understanding how they view their students is instrumental in understanding how policy can be changed. I am conducting a national survey for all teachers, both general education and special education teachers. This is not an easy task, but I find it very, very important to understand what all teachers view students with disabilities as and what they think of it. What is their philosophy to include students with disabilities in the classroom? Inclusive education is defined as an all-embracing philosophy, movement, and process. For students with disabilities, it allows them the opportunity and the educational opportunity to be a part of the general education classroom, participating and learning with peers just like them, as well as other peers without disabilities. In the scant amount of research available on Trinidad and Tobago, mind you, the first attempt to implement inclusion was in the 1980s, and that was unsuccessful due to the lack of supports available as well as a lack of teacher preparation. Empowering teachers is instrumental and will help improve policy changes in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
That's fine. I'll tell you when to go.
Hi everyone. We are lucky to be living in an era where capturing memories in forms of photos and videos is possible. It happens sometimes that our hands are shaky and we end up with videos that don't look really good. Wouldn't it be great if our phone notifies us within the same minute that, hey, the video you just captured is of bad quality? Sometimes recapturing the same scene is possible, and hence those memories will not get lost. My goal out of my PhD is to achieve that. To do so, I need to measure automatically the video quality in a fast yet in a reliable way. This problem is actually important to many people besides consumers. For instance, think about iPhone engineers trying to create for us better and better cameras. They want also to have an accurate measure of how good the video shot by these devices are, right? So, how to measure video quality? What I was able to find is that if we take a video and we process it in the same way our human visual system does, and then if we look at the statistics, I can obtain a lot of information regarding quality out of these statistics. For instance, the statistics of good videos are very different from the statistics of bad videos. So I used this in order to create a new model that can automatically predict for me the quality of shot videos. The next question was, does my model work? In order to answer that, I needed a database that contains videos and associated quality scores. What I did is that I constructed a very large database. In fact, it was the largest because everything is bigger in Texas, and to make sure as well that the videos contained in my database are representative. So I was able to collect around 600 videos shot by 80 different users of various ages, styles of capture, etc., by about 100 devices. The videos shot were capturing multiple scenes and were suffered from multiple types of artifacts. In fact, the scenes spanned 26 different countries, and even one of my videos came from a space shuttle to make sure that our friends in the outer space are as well covered. To collect the quality scores, I conducted a survey where 5,000 participants from across the world provided me with quality labels. This allowed me to obtain more than 200,000 quality scores. Using my database, I was able to verify that the model I built allows me to predict the quality in a fast, yet in a reliable way, and hence, I hope soon to be able to notify the users when a problem arises when they capture the videos. Thank you so much.
Good job.
On January the 20th, 2005, when George W. Bush was taking the oath of office, scores of cameras recorded happy American faces elated about being part of history. Protesters were there as well, but the overall tone was of a celebration. In contrast, when a decade later, another Republican took the very same podium, the news report came as account of a funeral procession, and the grieving nation was reportedly bracing itself for the worst. So was this an accident, a spillover from a bitter campaign? Or was it an indicator of something changing profoundly in the political culture? I'm a communications scholar, and I study the news in order to understand how the news participate in maintaining the social and political order. The study I'm reporting today looked at the inauguration news on the day when Americans expected to hear a story of reunion. They expected to participate in a ritual of a peaceful transition of power. But as I was reading my sample of national and local news, I noticed that the story went from liberty to carnage in two dramatic moves. First, the president got a much larger spot in the limelight. Moreover, Donald Trump decided to give a campaign speech. So he reiterated the very same story and grim picture of dysfunction and decay, which guaranteed that the media attention was directed to him and his mannerism and away from the civic lesson of democracy. Second, the supporting cast has also changed. Public officials have faded to the background, and forward came ordinary people. They're now more visible, but more resentful, less engaged, and less contemplative of what it means to live in democracy. But my story has not changed in one important aspect. Reporters maintain high standards. They claim high ground of professionalism and excellence. They maintain impartial and balanced tone. And that might seem as good news. In the current climate of constant blame laid on the media about escalating polarization and partisanship, we might think that we have found a solution, an impartial media, but we should not forget that I'm looking at a special event. On a regular day, things are different and stakes are very high.
Okay, that was our last competitor, and I think so, right? Anybody in here not gone? No. Okay. The judges are going to go with Danielle to the deliberation room. I would give it 30, 45 minutes. We will come back here and we'll announce who's moving forward. If you're not going to be here, please give Danielle your cell phone number, okay? I have a slight headache because that was an interesting trial. I wish all of you could go through, but we just can't. It's competition. Those of you who are going through, if you want to talk to me and see what the feedback is, I can give you some. Those of you who are not going through, I can talk to you about some of the feedback, but it'll probably be next week, okay? These are in the order of the presentations, no particular order. There was no like first, second, third, nothing like that. The first one going through is Takamatsu. Is she here? Okay, we'll let her know. Michael Lucas. Is that you? Okay. John Clegg. Is that you? Yep, okay. Mr. Pandy, is he here? Oh, he's not here. And Sino, is that you? Okay. Yeah, yes, congratulations. Those are the 5. So congratulations to the 5. Thank you all for participating. If you're not graduating, I'll see you right here next year. We have had people come back on multiple times. And again, if you want feedback, let me know and I'll provide you some feedback. Okay? Thanks.